As always, our recordings of our virtual meetups will be available on YouTube about a week after the meetup, and we'll post a message on Meetup when the recording is ready. Next, I am very pleased to introduce our speaker today, Joshua Herman. Joshua Herman is a Python developer working on currency trading infrastructure with Bank of America. He is also an amateur data engineer applying generative machine learning to create art, make fake tweets, and write novels. He also does abstract art using pastels to write music and poetry. Today, we'll handle all of our questions at the end. So if you have questions, feel free to write them down in the chat throughout, but I'll read them to Joshua all at the end in the order that they were received. Take it away, Joshua.
Hello. So introduce myself again. I'm writing a visual novel that doesn't exist. Plan on possibly releasing an alpha version by December, but I've been working on this project around a year or two. Really wanted to explore on how you could somehow like elevate video games like in a new direction. And I think that this may have applications in metaverse, but I did plan on this having eventually an AR or VR component, or at least a video component, as maybe a sequel or a better version. But as you know, I'm a Python developer at Bank of America. I'm an amateur data engineer, which means I don't really create new models. I just work with existing models to apply them to complete objectives. Right now, I'm looking into video games, specifically visual novels. So first, we want to know why we are here. So a lot of people in the group may be familiar with, obviously, machine learning applied to non-video game contexts, like, for example, regression, anomaly detection, and so naive Bayes. But video games, while we have seen a lot of them with the procedural techniques, they usually limit themselves in the artistic manner that they're created. To give you an example, Zelda, Mario Brothers, and so forth have a lot of sprites, or even or they went from 2D to 3D models after Super Mario 64, and even Left 4 Dead 2, which had a AI game master to maybe either change the difficulty or change situations. It's a very big part of any video game where you have in-game assets, anything from voice acting to to art in general, to even lore or stories that you want to tell. For example, in the original Super Mario Brothers, they had large limitations on the design of Mario. The limitations were that he had to be recognizable within, I think he's 3 by 8 pixels, but that actually made him a plumber and Italian, or a plumber, and they're like, I don't know if it was Italian. They added that in, I think, later, or that might have been the original. I don't know. But you can see that because of that, they needed like red and black and white in that context. And the same with Luigi, and every single sprite including like Bowser. Bowser, you had to be able to recognize a person immediately when you started the game, and you had to understand like what the character sprites are there. But these were still hand coded. Even the clouds are actually a palette swap for the green grass. And yeah. So, and even agent behavior is a big part, but it's relatively hard anyways, because you're basically having an AI go through a graph where it can be reachable. And a lot of art in the game can clip through very easily because you have this like abstract, you have this 3D model, you have like bounding boxes on it. And because you can clip through sometimes, you can do the physics can glitch out. Now, that's not to say that generative techniques can fix that, but it would be making video games a lot more interesting because you could just never stop playing them. Or they could have open-ended situations. And maybe you don't have the skill to create art for video games, like I don't. I don't know how to do this, actually do 2D art, but I'm able to actually use these techniques to do it. In generative art, you're actually exploring the latent space of the high dimensional data, but instead of just so you look at a slice of it, and you look not if it is you look at them, and you can actually, a lot of these tools, well, I'll show later as a video, that the latent space can be stepped through in various ways. And also, going back to what I said before, breaking the rules of other kinds of video games. I'll expand on that when I introduce the visual novel component. So let's go a little bit of theory. I went down a little bit of theory there. And so going back, generative machine learning, the objective is to mimic an existing set of observations, to do the above task itself, to create an approximate value as the task. So, but instead of, so when you're sampling the latent space, you're really just looking at points in between the high dimensional space, various slices. And a lot of attributes can be as parameters, and it really works pretty well with GAN, specifically 2D data to like make anime. So there's a few reasons for that. One is that there's this model called waifu 2x, which is not a joke, but it sounds like a joke, but where it automatically upscales or denoises any image that's in anime. And I think that's what really got people into it, because of the single task that you could upscale anything. A lot of people liked art, so they would but they may have a really bad picture, so they just take the deep learning model and then just apply it, and you now have an upscaled version. And if you're not familiar with images and upscaling, think about if you have a 4K television and you have a 1080p signal. Upscaling to 4K would be to take the 1080p signal and either spread it out on the 4K television and also infer some of the points on it. NVIDIA has DLSS on their video cards now that can do certain upscaling, although it sort of seems somewhat, it can't, which was sort of 1.0 had some weird bugs where you could see that but the second version of it, I think, fixed them. Although I don't really play a lot of games that have that feature, because it's play different kind, but I know it exists. But the anime version works so well that it is, you are generally instructed after you create any art is to pump it, to input it to waifu2x anyways, because it denoises the image. So you get a better signal, regardless of what it is. It doesn't matter. You're everybody, and and really it's a good, it presents an advantage to anything else. So first, this is sort of an interesting thing that I had to do. And this is, I believe, original work, and I'm not familiar with it. So the visual novel, sort of like the visual novel I'm trying to write is sort of like a simulation of a dating game. But the game master I have is, you can think of it as a state machine with achievements, where you can unlock states. I also want the states to be created randomly or procedurally. But you have a set of achievements, and how it works is the game master applies sentiment analysis to the input and output, to the user's input, and allows them to proceed or not proceed. I'm going to just we'll go into this a lot further. So more into the game master is, so I was watching YouTube one day when I was working, I shouldn't do that. But so there was a relationship researcher, John Gottman, and he used this magic ratio of 5:1, where successful intimate relationships has a balance between positive and negative feelings and actions between partners. So, and also there's a 15:1 to back off, that you shouldn't reach. So it's bounded actually from 5:1 and 15:1. Now, with this ratio, I can apply that to the sentiment analysis portion to actually figure out, to make the user have to program the game master. The game master then becomes just a system that does sentiment analysis. And I might actually, and what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to add it to the user, just for monitoring purposes, or even to also look at ground truth, because a lot of psychological techniques have low observations of ground truth. When I worked at a social network lab, when I was still at school as just an undergrad programmer, and there's also so obviously I can implement this ratio by just taking the sentiment analysis, and the sentiment analysis is either positive or negative. So I just maintain two counters. I have a counter of positive and a counter of negative outcomes, and then I just calculate a ratio. Now, so this is the end of a game. This is the algorithm I'm using for the game master. Should be part 3 order. So I have an interaction. I provide a mulligan to the input because you would fail immediately. I'm thinking of mulligan. I think I'm having this system provide a mulligan of around 5, at least for the initial interactions. Because if you didn't, then you would just fail the game immediately. I don't want people failing the game immediately. That sort of wouldn't be a good idea. So, but it can be n interactions. So basically they just have to be within these bounds, and then they have to initiate to progress to a next state. So like I'm thinking of having like a meet state where you meet the individual, or having possibly a texting state, and then it goes from to other places there. And then you can unlock new states, but they're only achievements. And the achievements I want to package, like for like going to a bar or like going for coffee would be one bundle, and I have sets of bundles, and I just increase the achievements, but it's still open-ended, like as long. And also with this game master, you can, if you fail it immediately, it just restarts the game for very obvious reasons. You still have to, I still have a lose condition. Well, on one side I could fail the game, but on the other side, I don't think that actually forgot that what I really want to do is if you don't fail the game, you just get stuck in one state, which is like the friend zone. So that's another state. So like, as you can see, like all these states, there's no end condition. I mean, there are things you can do and you can unlock, but it has end conditions. And also if you can also move backwards from bundles, but a lot of these things are sort of in flux and I'm still designing it. So that's why it's like this. So there's some prior work, and these are the only 2 or 3 things I was able to find. So the AI Dungeon is a text adventure using GPT-3, which is this is from a group called OpenAI, although GPT-3 is owned by Microsoft now. And in my opinion, although this is not anything else, I'm not seeing why Microsoft doesn't just buy out OpenAI, because they have a lot of their assets. Replica AI had a state machine that uses some text-based AI that is, I don't think, they're not using deep learning, they might be using other systems or smaller systems with a virtual character. Basically, we're different that we model a conversation, specifically dating, and we are using a model that is generally used for conversation called Blenderbot. To indicate mood, we use a picture that's manipulated to express this, and we figure out mood by using sentiment analysis on the user input. So like that's a little bit about design, but you might want to, should have actually done this further. So like a general visual novel it's many static branching paths and a visual component in anime style with save states. So this gives you more context into what I was designing before and why it's, so basically this is a text adventure like the AI Dungeon, but it also has a visual component. But instead of having a fixed set of branching paths that you actually click on, it will have a more higher set of branching paths. Won't have even a set of branching paths. Since you're interacting with a conversational AI, it doesn't end. The visual component will eventually be either generated or it will be it'll randomly select from already a set of pictures that were already generated before, and you'll still have save states, but that's not obviously. So this is an interesting data set. This is by an individual named Guern and various other people that was crowdsourced. So they took a bunch of, this is a data set that I believe is around 4 terabytes of picture data. And it's all tagged, and it's an illustration data set, all of anime pictures. And this is what's used to power a lot of generative picture systems, specifically of people. It is, but it's also heavily biased into females, which is an issue with the data set itself. I think I'm not sure if they have a strategy to fix that. They also, but I'm pretty sure it's already tagged anyways. I'm not, so here's like the roadmap that I have in the current implementation. Like one state is currently functional. I can show expressions of what an agent, but I was working on this to fix, and I'm working on using a visual transformer maybe to also generate a background instead of just using Flickr, and then a style transfer. So style transfer is when you would take a set of states. Like, for instance, this would be like if you took a picture of yourself and then use this data set, and then it would show you a picture of yourself as like an anime character. So that might be an interesting thing to add to the system anyways. But so plan on finishing the state machine and also the controller. Unfortunately, I also broke it, so I don't have a working. It's not really working a little bit this right now because I was trying to implement some new features. To like practice. So this is what it shows so far, but I don't really want. Unfortunately, the background obviously doesn't cover the foreground. So I'm probably going to have to introduce some kind of alpha transparency on the main image to figure out, probably using OpenCV or something to do that. I mean, although, but let's look at, here is a video of how you can explore the latent space. And this is how I actually generate like the characters. Like you can see, you can't see it very. Let me do that again. So you can see that right now I have the mouth open, and it just changed from 0 to -32.311.545, which is the parameter. Now I actually made this one. I've actually seen pictures where I have like the open mouth and then it goes closed, but I really have to reproduce this picture because it's actually a picture of one of them that's actually mad, which I don't have any, which I was never able to reproduce. And I think I can do that by just taking a picture of this and then putting it back in. Or I can possibly, maybe I'm just missing it. There's another thing you can do is that it'll probably pop up soon when you click batch and then combinatoric. Yeah, still playing. So when you click batch and combinatoric, what it does is instead of having two images like 0 and -33, it'll actually just sample across the latent space from this one to 0, which means that you have the expression that you want. So because it samples by just lowering this value to 0. Use fast. I think I actually accidentally generate a new one. Yeah, so basically you click on the button, you click on here to select the mouth, and then it changes it by changing the value. This tool is called GANStudio. It's yeah, I think I actually, and you can, I also can see this. There's another picture I have this, but you can see that this you can do a lot. This is how I actually generate stuff. So like background is generated by AnimeGAN 2. Version 3 is coming out soon. The text is generated by Blenderbot. The character that moves is generated by this and Blender is generated by GANStudio. And Blenderbot is from Hugging Face. They have a lot of transformer models that are available. So this is a better image of the gameplay that I made. It's like you can see the open face and it closes to a smile. So then you can sort of see how it responds. So like let's go into the difficulties in creating this. Biggest problem I had like with making this is reproducing other people's work. I usually time box reproducing others' work. I will only try to do it for an hour. If I can't reproduce your work in an hour, I won't use it. Then I'll try to use it another way. Main issue is that the code distributed doesn't work. Either or, and not sure why. Usually a lot of academic stuff is it's like post on the use it once, but and it's very frustrating to even see that. And it's also a red flag if I can't reproduce your work. But I don't know a lot about that. Even the ACM had that where they ran, I think they sampled a bunch of work and then they looked at how reproducible it was, and they got like around 50% that didn't work. I think like submitted conference papers or something. I don't know. It was like a while ago. The second part, especially with GPT-3, is sort of like an app store like concept. So you can use GPT-3. They give you a bunch of free stuff, queries, but eventually what happens is you have to get approved by it, and they require the approval. So I don't really like to be dependent on that. One, they could just choose to not to approve it, and then I can't really, the video game wouldn't work. So I don't really like that. I'd rather replace it with something almost as good. The other problem is the code entered data isn't available. I think I can understand the code on the data not being available, especially if it's pretty large. But the code not being available, that's even bigger red flag for reproducing. And I'm not sure why people do that. They can, a lot of people cite that it's at this point, like when you get to large generative AIs that or language models, there are obvious. I gave a talk at a hacking conference at ThoughtCon where I had some ideas on doing large scale social engineering using language models to basically hijack Twitter. I looked at that because first I was trying to look at how easy it was to manipulate people using just faking tweets, and by scaling up by just buying like Instagram accounts or Twitter accounts. It would cost you probably around $20,000-$30,000 for the accounts, maybe. And then it would maybe cost you 6 to 12 months with it, maybe two. Like I could probably do it myself, or even get 2 or 3 people to do it. I mean, you could do it pretty large, but the problem is that it might be too expensive because you could just also do it the old-fashioned way, but it's gonna keep on getting cheaper and cheaper to do. So it becomes a threat very fast. And I don't see a good mitigation because even Facebook Facebook does this. Facebook does a pretty good job, to be honest, about having their models being open, but also furthering the cause of being responsible, like fair seek. So they've defined basically ways of not just restricting models isn't really the answer. Providing a challenge or like a data set that would, actually do the thing, like not to figure out if a model could be used hostilely, like FairSeek and others, is a much better strategy, because you're not going to be able to control these published papers, because it only costs a few like NVIDIA cards, like, or a bunch, or like a few $10,000 to $20,000 of cloud credits to just reproduce your paper. So you're just what you're only doing is you're just making it, just letting people reproduce it that have a budget of like $10,000 to $20,000 or more. So I had some ethical considerations when we designed this. The game would be too addicting, could influence the people who play the game in a largely negative way. I also thought of one where if you play the game, you could also use it hypothetically, like just to just play it against another person that doesn't know it's fake, although I'm not sure that's a real big thing. So yeah, so I did have a game demo, but it wasn't working as well. So I think that's it. So if anybody has any questions. I have some bibliography. So yeah, there's any, that's it for the presentation. So
Yeah, thank you, Joshua. We'll wait a couple more seconds to see if anyone puts any questions in the chat, or anyone is also free to unmute themselves.
Oh, very interesting, Josh.
yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you for your talk, Josh. If anyone has any questions that come up later, feel free to reach out. I think he's on Meetup, or you could reach out to us and we could help you get in touch with him.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Maybe I'll talk to you more after this talk.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, curious about your app.
Also, I can upload my slides, or I think there were a little bit typos, but I'll upload those slides. I had if anybody wants them also. So
Yeah, that would be great. We can post them on Meetup as well.
okay. Bye, everybody.
Great. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.